I think this is everybody. Does anybody know if we're missing anyone? I think this is everyone. Also online. All right, folks. Then we're going to get started with the meeting. I call this meeting to order at 3:04 p.m. We're going to begin with roll call. Sorry, I need to make sure I have both my screens up. Art Student Representative Margaret Ann.
Here.
Board of Governors Student Representative Anna.
Here.
Board of Governors Student Representative Drew.
Present.
Education Student Representative Tiana is absent with regrets. Equity Student Representative.
Here.
Indigenous Student Representative Molly.
Here.
Thank you. Indigenous Student Representative Sierra is absent with regrets. International Student Representative Darren.
Here.
Student of African Descent Representative Atik. Is absent with regrets. Sorry, folks. Science Student Representative Mackenzie.
Here.
Business Student Representative Hunter.
Here.
And First Year Representative Josh.
Here.
Awesome. All right. President.
Present.
Vice President Academic.
Here.
Vice President Finance and Operations.
Here.
Vice President Residence Affairs.
Here.
Vice President Activities and Events.
Here.
Vice President External Affairs.
Here.
Deputy Chair Council.
Here.
Students Union General Manager.
Here.
All right, thank you everybody for coming. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we're in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. The territory is covered by the Treaties of Peace and Friendship, which Mi'kmaq and Maliseet peoples first signed with the British Crown in 1725. The treaties did not deal with the surrender of lands and resources, but in fact recognized Mi'kmaq and Maliseet title and established the rules for what was to be an ongoing relationship between nations. All right. Sorry, my tongue's really swollen. I think I'm allergic to that. Struggling with some of my words today. So we have a couple things on the agenda, a presentation from Rebecca, the budget, and then we have Elizabeth Yao will be coming in at 4 p.m. to kind of give us a rundown of things. Any questions before we get started? Sweet, sorry, I feel like I'm breathing really loud. I don't want to breathe into that. Now we'll move into the approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Thank you. Can I get a second, please? Oh, so many hands today. Thank you, Drew. Is there any discussion at this time? Drew? All right. Would someone like to call the question? Thank you. All right. All those in favor, please raise your hands.
Yep.
Yes, I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to do this with online.
Yeah, just raise your hand.
We want to add that now.
So yeah, we have before we approve the agenda.
Oink. Okay, so we're just going to go back a second because there was discussion. There's a motion for an amendment to add a motion to the agenda. How would you like to phrase it?
We could say motion to endorse the student experiences and opportunity. Let's say motion to endorse the student experiences strategic plan.
All right, an amendment to endorse the Student Opportunity and Experiences Plan has, okay, we're going to vote on that, so, how are we going to do this with online?
I have a question.
Yes.
So are we just adding it now and then?
Yeah, and we'll vote on it at the end. Yeah.
Putting the motion on the table. Yeah.
Yes, sorry. How about we do, all those who would like to oppose the amendment, please raise your hands in the chat or raise your hands now. All those who would like to abstain, please raise your hands in the chat or raise your hands now. All right, so the motion passes unanimously with the amendment, and then we're going to move into voting on the amended agenda. If someone would like to call the question, thank you, Drew. All right, all those who would like to oppose, please raise your hands now or in the chat. All those who would like to abstain, please raise your hands now or in the chat. Awesome, all right, the motion passes. Thank you, folks. Sorry that was a little confusing. Did you get that message?
Yes.
Okay. Rebecca will do that quick. Thank you, Rebecca.
Yes.
All right, moving into the approval of the minutes from last council. Would someone like to motion to approve the minutes? Thank you, Anna. Can I get a second, please? Thank you, Drew. All right, any discussion on this motion at this time? Nope. All right, if someone would like to call the question, thank you, Josh. All those who would like to oppose, please raise your hands now or in the chat. All who would like to abstain, please raise your hands now or in the chat. All right, the motion passes unanimously. All right, we're gonna do reports. We understand that the reports happened a week ago, so if you have nothing new to update, just feel free to let us know that, and then we can just keep trucking along. So we'll start with Margaret Ann.
Hello, hello, I'm here. So, turn myself around one. Okay, so, this week, yeah, it's been a pretty light week. Committee on Studies met on the 31st just to go over a couple proposals, from Music and Arts, Philosophy, and Celtic Studies departments. And Joint Committee on Studies met on April 1st to continue reviewing the academic integrity policy and procedures. And Quality of Life also met on April 7th to continue reviewing the strategic plan and the res renewal project. And yeah, I attended the Senate forum on PACCAR, and we had some good discussions about how the consultation process was going on campus. Yeah, that's about it for me.
Awesome. Does anybody have any questions for Margaret Ann at this time? Nope. Epic. All right. Board of Governors, Student Representative Anna. Oh, never mind. Rebecca's gonna run it over. All
Hi
right.
everyone, I hope all of you who are sick are feeling better soon. I don't have anything new to report this week, but I wish you all the best of luck with finals around the corner, and I know it's a very busy time.
Awesome. Thank you, Anna. Any questions for Anna at this time? Nothing? All right. Board of Governors Representative Drew, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you so much. So welcome to the last council. I don't know why I said that, but whatever. Welcome. So there's not a lot to report, very pretty light period because of 7 days. But one thing that I would like to report is that me and Jack attended the Board of Governors budget presentation from Andrew Beckett. It was a pretty good presentation. That's from Board of Governors side. And besides that, so along with me, a lot of people are going to have their last council today. So it's been a pleasure to work with all of you. It was kind of sweet and sour relationship. So if you eat a lot of sweet things, you will get diabetes. So a little sour is good with that. But thank you so much. At the end of the day, I always appreciated all of you. And thank you. And all the best for your finals.
Awesome. Thank you. Any questions for Drew? All right. Equity student Tiffany, you have the floor.
Hi. There's feedback. Okay, so I have nothing new to report. But it was really nice to work with everyone, and I wish everyone good luck with all their exams at the end of the year. But it was a great pleasure to work with everyone too.
Epic. Thank you, Tiffany. Any questions for Tiff at this time? Nope. All right. Indigenous Student Representative Molly, you have the floor.
Hey guys, I don't really have anything new to report either, but yeah, it was really nice working with all of you guys, and I can't wait to see you guys more.
Awesome. Thank you. Does anybody have anything? Any discussion items or whatever? Awesome. All right. Thank you, Molly. International Student Representative Darren, you have the floor. Epic. Okay. We'll just move on then. Science Student Representative Mackenzie, you have the floor.
Hi everyone, thanks. I really have nothing new to report. Congrats to everyone who's graduating.
here, have so much fun, and yeah, have a great exam season.
Sorry, this was my thing was all the way up. All right, thank you, Mackenzie. Business Student Representative Hunter, you have the floor.
Hey, nothing this quick period. Emergency grants met, gave some emergency funding, and budget and finance met a couple times. Other than that, it was great. Just want to say thanks to everyone. You've all been great to work with, and best of luck to those of you who are graduating and whoever's on council next year. It's been a blast.
Epic. Thank you, Hunter. Any questions for Hunter at this time? Nope. Okay, first year representative Josh, you have the floor.
Thank you, everyone. I met with Jack early last week to plan a Cheers to First Year kind of event. I'm planning to meet with Sean Kiley hopefully tomorrow, so we can do something at the end to just celebrate everyone being together. Finally, a year when we can actually a little bit more come in and feel like we belong, with a few more social interactions. So hopefully we can get that done. And I sat on a hiring panel to employ the next academic year society coordinator with Mackenzie and with Callie Beaton. We had so many great candidates. It was a tough decision, but I'm pleased with the panel's final decision, and I look forward to actually discussing who we chose. In terms of some other things that happened, I started discussing some like midnight, hopefully pizza parties for some society fundraisers at Bloomfield. Those are something hopefully that'll go on for next year. And I look forward to coming back to council next year and hanging out with many of you fantastic folks and getting some more work done. So anyway, have a great summer, everyone, and can't wait for some more discussions.
Awesome. Thank you for everyone's sweet and kind words. It was great working with you all, and I'm very sad to see some of you go. Moving forward to executive reports. President Jack Irving and CEO. Can't forget that part.
It'll never get old.
Jack has the floor.
I guess it will actually, because this is almost done. I'll give a quick update on what I've been up to, just because I wasn't at council last week. So CASA is officially over. I guess not Ben, I am retired from CASA. So we had our last little AGM and plenary, got some voting in, and got to say goodbye to all those folks. For students in Nova Scotia, we have the transition weekend is upcoming, is this weekend. It's going to be here in Antigonish, so we're going to have the incoming and outgoing board members. We're going to do a lot of training all weekend, and hopefully be able to show them some of lovely Antigonish. We have the student banquet tomorrow, so I'm doing some work on that. Very excited, and hopefully the snow doesn't come. Then just beyond that, a lot of transition still. We're going to be continuing meetings for the last few weeks here for the upcoming team. And then we had a BOG meeting this week, which went well. And Mary and I attended the Ramadan event too for the Muslim Society. It was their first event, and it was really nice to go there and chat to a bunch of the folks there and learn about Ramadan, which started on Saturday. So yeah, that's about all about me. Officially retiring. Old Salt Dog, last council, so thank you everybody for the year. Had a blast, and good luck to you all for next year.
I like that old salt dog. Alright, any questions for Jack at this time? Nope. Alright. Thank you, Jack. Meredith, you have the floor.
Okay, just a couple updates. The applications for the OER grant program closed on Thursday, and we got 5 or 6, which is awesome. The committee will be meeting, I think, April 13th, around and about, so I emailed the student senators about that, and we'll see where that goes. It'll definitely be a pass-along project to Miami Stobart. And then apart from that, Senate is meeting on April 25th, holiday after this Thursday. The year is wrapping up, and thanks to all you on council for your support and engagement throughout the year. It was a good time, and see you next year.
Thank you, Meredith. Any questions or comments for Meredith at this time? No? Alright. Vice President of Finance and Operations, Brendan, you have the floor.
Awesome, thank you very much. And I guess I'll just also say, yeah, it's been really, really nice working with you, and I'm excited to hopefully change some things next year and get some great work done next year. As everyone else has also said, it's been a pretty short reporting period. The major things that I've been working on are obviously just getting the budget finalized. Yesterday or
2 days ago rather, we had that consultation, or sorry, no, yesterday. And then the other thing is, I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with the fact that we went out for tender in terms of our banking services. So right now, Sean and I and a couple other individuals, Julianne, we've been meeting with different banks just to kind of explore our options. We had Scotiabank and RBC put in 2 great offers. We met with both their teams. And over the next week, we'll kind of be deliberating what the results from that were and which proposal we'll be moving forward with. But yeah, other than that, not too much else to report. So I'll throw it back to you, Naomi.
Thank you for that, Brendan. Any questions for Brendan at this time? Nope. Epic. All right, Vice President of Residence Affairs, Sophia, you have the floor.
Hi everybody. Sorry my exec report was late. I tested positive for COVID on Monday and had symptoms pretty bad for probably like 4 days, so I was kind of down and out. So most of the work I did this week was just on residence renewal because I was pretty tired for most of the week, so apologies. But yeah, nothing crazy to report, just did a bunch of meetings on residence renewal. I finalized the response that we chatted about last week in council, and I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for such a supportive year, especially through a lot of my portfolio kind of going crazy. But yeah, so I really appreciate everyone this year, and good luck in wherever you are headed after this.
Damn. Anybody else getting kind of emotional? Just me? Okay. Epic. Thanks, Soph. Any questions for Sophia? No? All right. Vice President Activities Events, Kira, you have the floor.
Hi. Nothing new to add too much from last week. I'm sitting on student marketing manager interviews this week, which is my biggest thing probably, as well as the banquet tomorrow. Other than that, yeah, thanks for a great year and good luck to everybody on council next year and wherever you're headed.
Awesome, thank you. Any questions for Kira at this time? All right. Vice President External Affairs, Ben, you have the floor.
Thank you, Naomi. And yeah, first off, just following what everyone else has been saying, like, love you all. It was a great year. It was really great to get to know a lot of you, and it was my first year really being able to be involved in council, which was a super dope experience. And I know we got a lot of good work done. So in terms of like the past 7 days, there's been a lot going on in the VPX world, but I'll keep it short. So the province released their budget, and like student-wise, there was not a ton of focus. They went mostly healthcare, but there was some big wins in terms of students with accessibility needs, entering the post-secondary sphere, and a lot of more nursing positions as well as skilled trades. So we'll see how that goes, but we're also going to continue pushing for the student elements that we find most important. And so yeah, there's a lot of work that can continue being done. And basically that, and then students NS transitions, kind of the big 2 things taking up my time. So yeah, that's about it. And if there's any questions, I'll have to take them. Thanks again.
Any questions? No? All right. Thank you for the executive reports. Moving into General Manager report. Sean.
Well, hello. Yeah, I guess the biggest thing Brendan already kind of talked about, we've gone to tender for new banking services. No other reason other than it's been overdue, and it was time to kind of see if we're still getting the best deal from our current provider or not. So that's been interesting. Also sitting on interviews yesterday for all the senior management positions, so student managers, security, and security manager, security supervisor. We still have a couple more interviews to give, but those decisions will be made very soon. And of course, the big old banquet tomorrow. Sadly, we won't have everybody there. COVID, fist in the air angrily. But we will have, thank you, Naomi. So yeah, hopefully we'll be figuring that out. And yeah, thanks to everyone for their amazing contributions this year, both around the council table and on our campus. Without student leaders, obviously the student union would be nothing, and you all, representative council, executive board, you know, really lived up to our core values in some pretty tough times this year, and yeah, you're all to be commended. So thank you on behalf of the full-time staff and the students that you know, maybe not be as engaged as you are on the issues on our campus. So thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you for those sweet words. Awesome. Any questions for Sean at this time? Nope. All right. Well, Brandon Malloy very sadly could not make it today. I know we're all torn up about that. I know I am. We're going to move into the results of special reports of council, beginning with results of student thesis project regarding St. FX student health by Rebecca.
That's me!
Yay! Do you have a mic?
Can you guys hear me from here?
Yeah.
No, like online?
Oh. Can you guys hear Rebecca?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, let me share the
Sorry.
screen.
Sorry.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah. Sorry that I'm brain dead.
How do you present this?
I don't know.
How do you present? How do you? Okay, is this okay if I do it like this?
Yeah, sometimes it's funny like that.
Okay, this is fine. So yeah, I did my thesis project this year on, so what I did, I kind of surveyed students and I have all these results about the sexual health behaviors and services on campus. And I wanted to present to all you folks because I think it's important that student leaders have this information. And a lot of you will be sitting on council next year or continuing your involvement on campus. So it's important for y'all to know this. I will be talking about some heavy topics today, including sexual violence and mental health. So if anyone needs to step out or leave or use any support services, they're listed here and on the slide deck that I sent out in the council package. So please feel free to use them if you have to. So here's a little agenda of what I'm going to go through today. I'm going to give some like an introduction and background to why I'm doing this research, and then I'll go through the details of how this project came to fruition, and then we'll get into the thick of it in the results section. And I also have some discussion questions I want to ask you folks because I'm just interested to see what y'all say. So why is this research important? I'm glad you asked. So obviously we all know we're all students. University students are very susceptible to contracting sexually transmitted infections, also known as STIs, and also very susceptible to sexual violence. Hookup culture on university campus and is like a looming figure on all campuses across Canada, and it's important to recognize this when talking about sexual violence and health. And also, as everyone knows, St. FX has had a long history of sexual violence with formal complaints going to global news sources, so it's important to keep transparency in our institution. So back in 2012, one of my co-supervisors, Dr. Kathy McDonald, was the primary investigator of a study that was done on all maritime undergraduate universities, and it pretty much is this exact same thing of what I'm doing. So I wanted to kind of compare my results to the 2012 study's results to see, what's changed in the past 9 years. This continuity of research gives a lot of transparency for universities and can help support evidence-based decision making, which we all know is very important. So like I said, I want to compare my results to the 2012 results. This providing contemporary information on this topic and allowing comparisons to see how successful changes implemented after 2012 worked. And I also want to introduce some discussion and recommendations for advocacy or promotion regarding the health services and support services on campus. I disseminated my results to you folks, and I also talked with Heather Blackburn and Margie McKinnon on last Wednesday to get some information that I'm going to bring up some of the points they brought up in our discussion at the end. But yeah, I want to bring some awareness to the needs of students and the barriers they face. So when I designed my study, I kind of I modeled it exactly after the 2012 questionnaire that was sent out, but I also wanted to ensure that the questions I'm asking were contemporary and culturally competent. So it was directly influenced by the 2012 questionnaire, but I did have to do some updating of questions. For example, there was no data collected on anal or oral sex, only vaginal sex, so I wanted to include that. Also, the questions around sexual violence were very, not very informed. Like the question was, have you ever experienced forced sex? And obviously that's not the definition of sexual violence, so I added in some more definitions there. In total, I got 907 students participating in my study. After data cleaning, it turned out to be around 800. And I used an iPad as my prize incentive, and I think that's the main thing that got everyone going. Everyone loved that iPad. I used SPSS software to analyze my quantitative data, and then NVivo software to code my qualitative data. Alright, now we're into the thick of it. So I have a couple subheadings here just about what data I collected, and we'll go through each of these. Some I want to highlight a bit more than others. Some are kind of self-explanatory. So with the demographics here, it got cut off a little, sorry, but most students who participated in my survey were very representative of the general population at X. Most were cisgender women, white and heterosexual, as we all can kind of understand. And this is very representative in the Senate report, or the demographic report I got from the Office of Institutional Analysis. So it's pretty representative, which is good. So in my survey, if you guys remember, I asked a couple questions about sexual health knowledge, and you could either ask if it was, say if the statement was true, false, or if you didn't know. So this kind of shows the percentage of who got the questions right and who didn't. It was really similar to 2012, surprisingly. I thought people were going to get a bit more knowledgeable, but I guess not, but that's okay. There was a low knowledge, something to highlight, there was a low knowledge of emergency contraceptive timing, or also known as Plan B. People thought that you had to take it 12 hours after unprotected sex, but in reality it's 72 hours, so this is just something to highlight. Also, there was low knowledge regarding PAP and STI tests. I don't think people didn't know that PAP testing or STI testing was offered every time you get a PAP test, so that was something to highlight. Also, something that we'll just keep in mind for later on in the discussion, 85% of people understood that one can't give consent to sexual activities under the influence of alcohol. This is important to note because later on we'll see that a lot of students did report having sex under the influence, so that's just something interesting I thought I'd highlight. So now down to peer permissiveness. So this is also very similar to 2012. There is a high rate of peer permissiveness on campus. I kind of highlight this as hookup culture. So hookup culture is obviously very prevalent. It's not necessarily a bad thing to say that your friends like to have sex for recreation. I mean, I think we can all understand that. But it is important to know that there are some implications that come with hookup culture on campuses. The literature shows that hookup culture has a lot of negative impacts on students' mental health, sexual health, and overall well-being, and it is hard to change. It's a very strong presence, especially on university campuses. So yeah, I just wanted to note that it's very prevalent at St. FX. Next is sexual activity. So no surprise here, everyone is having sex. A lot of people having vaginal sex, a lot of people having oral sex. Anal sex isn't that as popular, but maybe with new anal exploration kits at a sex toy bingo it will be, who knows. When I presented these results to Margie and Heather at the Health and Counseling Center, they weren't surprised with the non-condom use. They're actually proud that 55% of students are using a condom. So for me, I thought that was still low, but hey, if it's a win for them, I guess that's good. Yeah, these rates of sex and condom non-use, as well as having more than 2 sexual partners, is similar to national rates and similar to 2012 rates on the vaginal side. As I said before, no questions about anal or oral were asked in 2012. Just move on here. Next is risk perception. So this is a big one that I found in my results. So when asked if students felt that they were at risk or greatly at risk of contracting an STI based on the sexual lifestyle. Only 5.29% of students reported feeling at risk. And then if we go down to the next slide, in reality, 47.23% of students are at risk of contracting an STI based on their lifestyle. I calculated this by seeing who didn't use a condom the last time they had sex and who have more than 2 sexual partners. So this is a big discrepancy, and this is also a big discrepancy that was highlighted in 2012. So it kind of shows that risk perception for students is still low after 9 years. So it kind of suggests that more education or health promotion should be focused on this. And yeah, I thought this was pretty alarming if you ask me. So we'll go next here. So sex under the influence. So like I said before, most students knew that you could not give consent under the influence of alcohol. However, over 1/5 of students reported having sex or having a sexual encounter they did not plan to have because they were under the influence of alcohol and or drugs. So this is just interesting. It was also similar to 2012. There's not a lot of change that I found, but this is just another cool thing to highlight. Go down here. So now we're going to talk about sexual violence. So these rates of sexual violence are high. To me, I feel they are a bit higher. In 2012, the rate of forced sex was at 5%, and now since I've broken it up, forced sex could, I guess, be defined as sexual assault, but still you can't do a direct comparison because of the change in definitions. But these rates are still alarming to me. Also, something important to note is that these questions were phrased or prefaced with, since being at university, have you ever experienced? So these rates are from students just experiencing sexual violence at university. Sexual harassment and sexual assault were defined for students before they answered these questions, so they could understand what they were being asked. Yeah, so this is just something to highlight as well. So now we're going to move to the use of the Health and Counseling Center. So hopefully all of you know the Health and Counseling Center is the on-campus clinic for students. So 38.73% of students reported seeing a healthcare provider at the center. This isn't a significant change from 2012. With confidence intervals, they're pretty much the same number. Something interesting to point out though is that only 26.58% of students have ever been tested for STIs at the center. And considering the high rates of sex, this hopefully would increase later on. If you look at these two tables here, it shows that pretty much everyone who have used the Health and Counseling Center only used it once and pretty much used it because of the location and because it was free or covered under our tuition. And yeah, as you see, the reasons why students discontinue their use is just because they had no reason for return. So it seems there's not a lot of continuity of care or follow-up for students, so that's something important to highlight as well. Alright, so service use. I'll talk about it more in the next slide, but this table kind of just highlights the most used services and their satisfaction rates. So counseling about the use of condoms, birth control, STIs, and also testing for STIs and mental health counseling were the most used services at the center. And we'll get into the satisfaction rates here. So STI testing, like I said, is the most used service, and it's also the highest satisfaction rate, which is good to see. 89.33% of students reported being satisfied or greatly satisfied with this service. Something that was concerning for me and also for my supervisors and Heather Blackburn, who I talked to, is that mental health counseling was one of the lowest rated services in satisfaction, but it was the second most used service. So that raises concerns as well. Other things to point out is that the lowest satisfaction rating between all of the services was discussing issues related to gender identity. So this kind of suggests that there should be more cultural competency training or even ways to change positive space training for healthcare professionals at the center, just so they are more educated on this topic and can help students more. So the highest satisfaction rates in total were for services related to STI testing and counseling, and also condom use and birth control prescription. So that's good to see. So depression and substance use, these rates were interesting because they didn't change from 2012. They're pretty static, I'd say in effects, but the national rates have changed. So that's just interesting to note. So something I thought that was going to go up, I thought marijuana use was going to go up since 2012 because of legalization, but this is the same rate as 2012. So only 35.91% of students have used marijuana more than once in the past 30 days. 62.52% of students have reported binge drinking more than once in the past 30 days, and almost 1/4 of students reported being at risk of developing depressive disorder. This was calculated by a 12-piece questionnaire called the DAVE questionnaire, I believe, that healthcare providers use to diagnose. So I kind of took their 12-item scale, put it in my survey, and then kind of evaluated that. Obviously, I'm not qualified to diagnose anyone, but that's why I put at risk of developing depressive disorder. So these are similar to the national rates, but like I said, in 2012, the rate of binge drinking didn't change, but it was higher than the national rate in 2012. Now it's the same as the national rate. So it seems all of Canada is starting to drink more to get on our level, looks like. So now we're into the qualitative responses. So the last 3 questions of my survey were open-ended questions, just to ask students further ideas and input on A, how to improve the overall health services, the sexual health services, and the sexual assault response. So in all 3 of these questions, advertisement of services and wait times or hours of operation were a large coded response. So a lot of students complained that they had to wait a long time to access mental health services, and also a lot of students didn't know that they had these services available at the center. Like literally like a bunch of students in these responses said like, oh, I didn't even know they had this until I saw your survey or whatnot. So that's an area for improvement for the center. Another important factor is that online accessibility was reported to be poor. So a lot of students reported not being able to navigate to the center's website or book an appointment. If you guys have ever gone online, if you go to click like in-person appointment, it only says STI testing. So a lot of students didn't realize that they offered other in-person services other than just STI testing. So that's just another thing for improvement. The sexual assault response also was interesting to me because a lot of students reported wanting more of punishment for offenders. They said a lot of students reported that offenders were just moved to different residences when they were reported instead of being removed from campus. Obviously, this is a more legal side of things for the university if they want to kind of remain safe. But to make it a true survivor-based approach, it would be better to kind of address this and talk with survivors to see what would work best. Alright, so after I talked with Margie and Heather on Wednesday, I had a few questions that I want to ask the students because there were some interesting things that got brought up. So when I brought up wait times to Margie and Heather, I don't want to say they disagreed with the student response, but they kind of highlighted that wait times in reality compared to off-campus private institutes, ER wait times, or even sexual assault clinics like in Halifax, the wait times aren't that long. I kind of disagree with this personally because I think since we're such a rural and isolated student service, kind of can't compare it to a Halifax regional municipality service. So I just wanted to ask, this is the last question I have here. I just wanted to ask if there's a discrepancy between student perception and the reality. And also I wanted to ask about advertisement. So like I said, advertisement was a really big issue for students. So I wanted to see how can students become more aware of services and what can be done to increase advertisement. So thanks for listening, guys. I'll love to hear your response to these questions. If you don't have anything now, you can just email me or whatnot. So thank you for listening. Yay.
Does anybody have any questions for Rebecca?
Do you want to have a discussion now about those questions? Or?
Yeah, if anyone has anything to say, like if you don't have anything to say or like if you have something to something later, you can let me know, but if someone wants to talk now, that'd be cool. Yeah, Mackenzie?
I had an interesting discussion with Elizabeth on Monday, and when I went to go talk about personal experiences with the Mental Health and Counseling Center, It was brought up that the university views the mental health and counseling center kind of as like an emergency basis and not as like a recurring
Okay.
like form of support. Like it's supposed to be like, I don't know exactly how, but so when I stated that I hadn't seen my therapist in 3.5 weeks, it was more of like, well, you got in the first place, which is good. So
Okay.
I think a transition there from understanding that we
Yeah.
need like recurring services instead of like one-off services on their point of view,
Yeah.
and also like, communicating that to students, because if you're going to communicate that you have mental health services on campus, you're expecting that you have
Yeah.
consistent care and availability, and that's not what they're actually
Okay, that's good. I'm gonna write that down right here. That's because also too I saw like I said, most students just use it once and then never come back. So there is quite a lack of continuity, I think. So that's cool to see for like your perspective on the mental health kind of way.
Yeah, Drew?
Yeah, so my question was regarding the wait times that
Yeah.
you said that like they compared to Halifax Regional Municipality and the local towns corporation. So did you have a chance to look at how other universities are having wait time as compared to Halifax?
Yeah, so they told me that for STI testing, the wait times aren't as long for STI testing. For mental health, it's max 3 weeks, they told me. So I have looked back onto like in Nova Scotia, wait times are long in all places. But what I've seen is that the wait times in private institutes or like in Halifax or whatnot, they're serving a much larger population. So their wait times are longer, but they're serving a population twice the size of the student population or 3 times the size of student population. And they have one or the same amount of healthcare providers we have here, like 1 or 2 more. So I do think the wait times for sure are different, of course, but it's a different context because our clinic is for students as a student service. So it only is responding to those 5,000 students we have compared to as in Halifax where it's like maybe 10,000. You know what I mean? But it is for sure longer outside. That answers your question.
Sort of going back to the communication side of Health and Counseling Center, there have been instances where I've sat down with someone to help them book an appointment and they go online. That's a big step, recognizing you need to go and book an appointment, and then it just says nothing is available and there's nothing, like no wait list, no information after that, which is really scary for that person if they need something. So like just having increased communication or some sort of like, here you can add your name and we'll contact you instead of having to go and check.
Okay, cool.
Additionally, I know that they have some sort of like same day appointment booking system. I only know that because of some training I have, but no one else knows that. So I think advertising that they do have that option as well would be really helpful.
Yeah, I agree too. Thanks, Hannah. Mary, did you have something?
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Josh.
Okay.
Is there any quantitative data out there that says how many counselors you should maybe have for a certain student body? Like, is it like, for example, okay, about 1,000 people, break it down, out of the 1,000, maybe like 33% go visit a counselor. That's enough to fit one counselor. Like, is there any true quantitative data that could lead us to inform Elizabeth, for example, about how many counselors we need on this campus?
Yeah, so there is data, but it's not necessarily for like specific to university things. So I believe that I have it in my paper. I'll find it and I can send it to you and like even show Elizabeth. But they recommend, like a bunch of research has shown that proper, like increased quality of care and like best case scenario, it should be 1 counselor for every like 50 people or something like that. Just for time and continuity. Like that's for mental health. Because if you want to have a therapy session monthly or even bi-weekly or bi-monthly or something, and you have this many people, and like let's say this was done like most people are getting, not maybe necessarily 30%, but if everyone wants to see a therapist, that's the kind of rate to go.
Now, how many people do we have using our service? Do we know that?
Yeah, so I have it in here. Let me get it up.
Sorry if you said that before. I just
That's okay.
forget.
So this is like service offered. This is based on people who have used the Health and Counseling Center. So 339 students out of 773 students who answered that question reported using the Health and Counseling Center. So I believe that's 38.71% of students reported using it. And this is the percentage of students using every single service we have. So obviously some are more used than others. This is also in the council package email that I sent out too.
Okay. Super.
Yeah. I think we only have 2 counselors right now, I believe.
Okay. Yeah, because
For-
one retired, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just brought her back for.
And then my last question just is what is actually being done for advertisement right now anyway? Besides word of mouth, I don't really see all that much, I'd say.
Yeah, so they have a website. That's kind of their main way to kind of get people to book their appointments because they have an online booking system. So when you go on the website, it has a link, and then the link brings you to like Health Myself, which is kind of like an online service they use to book. But other than that, like I don't know of any like actual outreach for students. They during O week, like I think they have like a little packaging of kits that like say where it is.
They have a couple posters up.
Yeah, and I think on social media too, they have a couple things on the used Instagram, but I think it can definitely be increased. Meredith, do you have something?
Yeah. So I think that the health and counseling website in general like needs a lot of work. It doesn't really lay out what services they even offer. And like even just if you want to like book an intake appointment with a nurse, like I've spent 5-10 minutes looking for like the website link to get there. So I feel like if they just took some time to like more properly lay it out, that would be super helpful.
Yeah, I agree.
And then in terms of the wait times, like they say like okay 2 to 3 weeks to get in to see a counselor, but the wait times in between appointments once you're even seeing them isn't great at our spot. Typically in town, once you're in with your counselor, you're seeing them like every 1-2 weeks, whatever you need. So even if like maybe on paper the wait times to get in are the same, I still think it's not as good on campus here.
That's the whole thing with the continuity too. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
I know like personally, yeah, it's like I had to wait 4 weeks in between like 2 like therapy appointments, and then like one day I was doing good and they were like, okay, well I guess I don't need to rebook you.
Exactly.
And I was like, what?
Yeah.
So yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
I agree.
And then the last thing is for the same day appointments. Completely agree. Not many students know about those. And I think to access them, you have to be able to call, and they never answer the phone. I'm not joking you. Like I was trying to get follow-up results like a couple weeks ago, and like I swear to God, I called 15 times before I got through. Like it's crazy.
Okay.
So like they just need to pick up the phone a little bit more.
Yeah, and everything you folks are saying is literally very in line with the qualitative responses I got from students. Like one of the phone was like a huge one too. I kind of added that in with like availability. Like I coded that with that. And same with the online accessibility. I think that's huge, especially that's the only way you can really book. If no one's answering the phone, that should be definitely worked on. Drew, then
Yeah, so one of the things that we discussed in the last budget meeting at Board of Governors is that like, well there's like identifiable like all the department universities websites. Currently I'm trying to like advocate for that.
Yeah.
Is that like ranging from like all the departments, they need a revamp. And this year they had like it was 7% of IT budget last year, which was reduced to about 5.2 this year, which is not good.
No.
So I tried to raise that point in Board of Governors, and well Andrew Baggett agreed upon that. But from council, if we can send something like email or like you did with OER that like this websites are like essentially useless because international office has been like people retired and new people came after, and this is the 3rd batch of international office and they still have the old people pictures there. It is just doesn't work in.
No.
So if we can pass something from council to revamp the websites, I think it would be a good idea.
I think, sorry, answering that, I think I have recognized that as a problem. I know there's like a digital steering committee going on about just like updating all of the internet stuff. They deemed it mission critical. So
that's been happening.
I've never heard that
since
version before, but yeah. So I think there's definitely recognition of that, which is good. My point was, I know in the past there was a wait list when you could call in before they used the online one, where they could like, if you called in at the beginning of the day, they could put you on a wait list. and then they would call you back. So maybe like bringing that back. I know the website is supposed to like kind of fill that gap, but I don't know. I thought that was really useful in the past.
Okay.
I don't know if anybody else utilized it. Hi, sorry, we're just finishing this up and we'll be ready to go in like 2 minutes.
Okay, do you want me to stay
No,
or-
it's okay. Yeah, feel free to stay.
Okay.
So we're just doing some discussion.
Yeah, Sean says they have quite a bit of advertisement during O week, and multiple presentations during O week about the services. So that's good. I think O week's definitely good. I also think students recommended to like in class visits during like first semester as well. During the qualitative questions. Yeah. So.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say sometimes like faculty members do even put it in their syllabus,
Yeah.
their syllabi, and just like that it's even available. I thought that was really helpful and like addressed a gap even there. Just having the professors bring it up can like make sure that it's being brought to your attention.
I think Sophia has a question. You can go ahead. So.
Yeah, you're good to go.
It was just really quick. Now, apparently, some faculties mandate that profs have to put it in, so they might be putting it in because they have to, which is great. But they might not address it in their like syllabus going over, which I think is something that all profs could do a lot better job of. Is like, yes, I have to put this on my syllabus, but like, here's actually like acknowledging them when you're going through your syllabus.
Okay, that's good. I'm making a note of that. I think
Me
that's a good
too.
point. Yeah, because I've noticed all my profs have done it. They've been like really kind about it, so I think maybe bringing that to more faculties and departments could be super beneficial.
For sure. Well, if there's no more questions, like thanks all for listening. I am gonna once I finish this, which feels like it's gonna take a long time, but I have to get it done by Friday. Oh no, I just hung up the phone.
I was about to say, you just.
I meant to stop sharing.
Awesome. All right. So, folks, we are at 4 p.m. So we're going to do the budget after the presentation. If that's all right, Brandon. Yes. I'm going to take that as a yes, Brandon.
Just a quick note too. This is gonna be available. Like my final thing is gonna be available in the library, so you guys will have access to it with all my data. So that's good.
Epic.
Okay,
Thank you,
that's it.
Rebecca.
All
Thank
right.
Awesome. Okay, I'm gonna flip my camera around so that you guys can kind of see as well, or I guess we could have it on the screen.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So we have the special presentation from Elizabeth Yao. Elizabeth Yao, you have the floor.
Here, I'll give you this.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh wow, does this
That's for the live stream.
Goes to the live stream.
Oh, okay, great. So I am here today to have an opportunity to follow up with all of you. I've had 2 presentations with council before, where and tabled the student experience and opportunity plan draft as it sits. And this session was really intended to be, for me, more of a listening session, understanding that you've had some time to think about the student experience and opportunity plan, the priority initiatives that have been put forward. And just to let you know, I wanted to today just speak to you about the timeline of next steps, as well as hear where the union is on behalf of your students with the plan. So perhaps I can walk through what is the process from here going forward, and then open the floor for some more discussion, if that would be agreeable to you. I don't have another formal presentation in the plan. I did circulate the documents in advance for your reference. So, so does that sound acceptable as a way to move ahead? Yeah? Okay, good. So what we're in right now is a process where we've presented the plan to key groups. So I'm meeting with the academic leadership team tomorrow. I'm meeting with the student union leadership team today, council. There's another, there will be a meeting formally with the executive. Carrie has yet to do some targeted focus groups that are specific for members of equity deserving student groups on campus. So we're still holding that final feedback. And what will happen is that will all be consolidated into the final draft, which will go forward to Senate on April 25th, Monday. April 25th. And so you will have your student representatives on Senate there who would be part of that vote. So what I'm imagining is today, I would really like to have feedback on the draft as it stands, because we've already consolidated quite a bit of feedback from students and other groups so far. My hope is that we're really getting close to a plan that reflects the priorities of all of our constituents that we're serving with this plan. But yet it may have some small tweaks between now and when it goes forward to Senate. It will go forward to the board as a final piece for the June board meeting. So there's a little bit of time to incorporate any final changes. So what I can imagine is that I would take any final tweaks. I would ideally like to have, kind of a blessing or an endorsement from this group now. But there is an opportunity to flag any concerns that you may have that you'd like us to take a look at. What I could do is send it back to you before it goes to Senate, because your student reps at Senate would have an opportunity to comment. So if council wanted to give any final feedback at that stage, then you could. And I think part of what I'm interested in knowing is how far off are we? Because if we're way off, we might even want to see if we could come back and get a more formal endorsement from this group. But I think we can decide after we talk today, and we can see where everybody's at with it. I am very committed to making sure that our student union is supportive of the plan. It's been collaboratively developed all the way, and but yet every time we talk, I get a bit more feedback, so that's been really helpful. So that's where we are in the process. The final plan would be accepted by the Board of Governors, and ultimately, Andy, as the executive lead, would be the person overall responsible for overseeing the implementation of the Student Experience and Opportunity Plan, and it is one leg of the overall university's one pillar, foundational piece of the overall university strategic plan. So that's my way of saying that it can continue to evolve and shift. However, my hope is that many of the things that you see in the plan will come to fruition within the next 5 years, provided that we can identify the resources to do that. So that's the process. So just by way of recap, the plan presented is an amalgamation of feedback from so many communities, and you've been through kind of the list of all the consultations that have happened. It's been pretty robust and very intentional around ensuring that the voices of underrepresented groups have been reflected and surfaced to be a big part of the priorities as we go forward. We've taken a very strong focus on student mental health in a proactive way. At the same time, hearing from many constituents that it would be an error to assume that we're already there, that all we need to do is be more proactive. I've heard loud and clear that we need to strengthen our current resources, and we need to increase access to the resources, and we need to reduce the wait times. So that's a big piece of it, and my belief is that we also need to be more adept at communicating the existing resources that we have. So a focus on proactivity and whole campus approach, so that we can really be able to, as a community, identify and respond when we see either ourselves or others who are showing signs of distress, and being in a position to intervene, whether it's directly, if you have that skill set, or if it's not, that you're aware of the resources, that you could make a reach out and have someone else approach, another trusted person approach someone if you have concerns. That whole campus, whole whole community approach is an underlying value of the direction that we want to go with this mental health and student experience and opportunity strategy. So the whole campus approach, building the resources. The other big piece is building those supports for experiential learning, career development, transition to employment through the plan. And that has come through again and again as an area where students are interested in having more mentorship and guidance and more pathways and resources for making those transitions through and out of St. X. And then with that, a number of smaller priorities, but those are the big areas of focus, together with specific strengthening of the resources for historically underserved groups. And as a part of that, a big focus on orientation, transition, and strengthening our residence model. So I'm sure, you know, in the 26 plus recommendations, I didn't hit on all of them, but you've had an opportunity to review them. And at that time, that would wrap up a few of the comments that I wanted to make, and really, with the permission of the chair, would turn it over to hear where you're at with this.
Yeah. So we do have a motion on the table later in new business about a formal endorsement. So we'll kind of vote on that then, but we can do discussion now. So I can like field conversation. Is there anywhere specific we want to start, folks?
Do you mind if I start here?
Yeah, of course, Josh.
Yeah, one of the things I was curious about is last council we kind of went over some of our priorities and what we were thinking. And one of the things that stuck out to me was the need, and maybe we can talk bigger on this, was an evaluation plan. Because this is a great brainchild. I understand the need for it, why there is residence renewal going on. But one of the biggest things is we might be so happy with what we did, and we might think it's kind of the god of the plans, it's what we believe. But I need to see a concrete evaluation plan. I think in this, to make sure that we don't get our rose-colored glasses on and think, wow, like everything's so good on campus now. We have this beautiful residence renewal. That we go through the steps of reconnecting with students, reevaluating, and have that really like a decade-long process so we can get this right. Because a lot of the things you're going to institute right away will only impact future generations and future incoming students later on. So if we can have a strict and conform evaluation plan by dates, I think this would be able to become something residence renewal, not just for the time it happens, but again, so we can keep improving. Because there's always improvements to be done. There'll be so many emerging issues as we come through the next decade. So if we can just keep that conversation going, I would appreciate that.
Absolutely, and you will see, I think if you read the extended plan, at the very end of it, there is a framework for evaluation. So we're looking at 3 and 6 year benchmarking points. So we do, for example, in residence, we do the Sky Factor survey every 2 years. This plan calls for an internal review every 3 years, and then an external review every 6 years. So 3 years is a pretty good timeline because it allows you to implement change, and then do it again and really get it right, and then have a year to actually formally assess the impact. And then the external review is a really important part because, to your point, we all can start to look at things with rose-colored glasses, and it's really important to have an external look in. And something that you'll be interested to know is overall the strategic planning piece that Andy is championing has metrics built into it. So beyond the review process, there will be specific targets that we're looking to hit. So for example, by improving the residence experience, can we increase the number of students who return to residence year over year so that it's not kind of first year, second year in, and then automatic off campus? Can we create residence environments that are more viable and attractive for people who may like to stay on campus for 4 years, but it's just not the setting? And we're not going to get everyone, and we couldn't, but we do have some capacity. So looking at ways to increase residence retention either through resident staff or a mix of staff and students. But in order to do that, we really need to be creating those kind of communities that are attractive.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Just reading through like the entire strategic plan compared to your executive summary, like I noticed that there's points about working directly with the mental health and wellness center in your executive summary, but is there any specific reason like why there isn't a point on the like in the strategic plan under the I think it's 4.4 I think.
In the long one?
Yeah, and then one, wait, let me just, I lost it. Just like under strengthen mental health supports, it's like subsection 4.3.
Yeah.
And there's just like, I'd really like to see a strategic initiative that lists out like more support and like growth of the mental health and wellness center. Because I think like that needs to be our top priority there even before we start like enhancing the prevention, things like that. Like, I think we need to have a point in there that we are committing to strengthening the current services that we already have.
Sorry, if people in the room could just speak up a little more for the laptop's sake.
I can.
Yeah.
No,
Oh,
it's
sorry,
on
that's
live
for the
stream, so,
live stream.
yeah,
It's just that we
smart.
need to talk a little
My
more
little laptop.
louder for the laptop.
Yeah.
Sorry, but
I
good
can,
feedback, yeah.
I can repeat the question. Beans, I've got the mic. I can either hand the mic or I can repeat the question. So the question was, can we strengthen the, I believe what you were referring to is that strengthening our current supports made it into the summary, but needs to be better articulated in the full plan. Got it. That was probably just a editing thing, so I'll catch that.
I asked if anyone has any.
I think Soph's talking, if you wanna turn.
My
yeah,
volume.
sorry.
Okay, go ahead, Soph.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Try now, Soph.
Hello?
Yeah,
that's
that's
better.
better.
That's good.
Okay. Thanks again for coming in today, Elizabeth. I think one of the things that still concerns me is there's so much stuff in the front of the plan based around mental health for students and like that really like continuum of care model that I really, really like. However, I still feel like we're not seeing eye to eye on the residence renewal, and so having that tacked onto the strat plan really kind of puts a dampener on it for me, specifically just because we're still working through so much very heavy stuff in regards to like changing our governance and like where we feel we're still having all those conversations, and so having this tacked onto the strat plan is where like I run into kind of a roadblock, especially with so much like interesting, and yet it does need a little bit of more feedback maybe, but there's still so much good on the continuum of care and stuff like that, that with the residence renewal point tacked on like right at the end, because it does kind of feel in the whole document a little bit like an afterthought, and I don't know if that's just because it's not incorporated enough throughout the rest of the document, but especially on those last pages where like one of the last sentences in those boxes is change to house council governance, it kind of dampens the whole document for me in a way. But yeah, that's where.
And Hunter says same here, Soph, in the chat.
Yeah, it's a good point because the residence piece started quite a while ago. Like that started back in 2017, so maybe it doesn't really belong in the strategic plan at all, because a lot of the ways that the strategic plan is going to be enabled by some of the changes that we're making within the residence renewal document, especially around the idea of an extended orientation and strengthening transition and providing greater levels of proactive support and guiding opportunities for students within the residence staffing model as it evolves. So, maybe it could just come out and we deal with it separately. I hear what you're saying. Cause, yeah, like we started conversations about this last year. And really, this work started in 2017, so, yeah.
Brendan raised his hand. If you want to go ahead, Brendan, you can go ahead.
Yeah, sure. And thanks, Elizabeth, for coming in. I guess, and kind of just to go off Soap's point a little bit, I think for me where there's a bit of unclarity, I guess, is just in that it does seem like a bit of an afterthought, and it seems almost like it was just kind of, it's almost being swept under the rug a bit and not fully, I don't know, it wasn't very clear. Like, obviously we have the whole, we can see the other plan that your department had sent us, and it's very clear in that, but in the actual strategic plan, it didn't feel as though it was really kind of embedded in the actual strategic plan. So I think if it was just more talked about throughout the entire plan, not necessarily just referenced to kind of in the end as much, it would just kind of allow for students to understand a bit better. Yeah.
Yeah, and can I kind of build off of that? I think res renewal specifically does have some major implications on our governance structures that we would like have to change the way that the union was built and worked and also functioned throughout the year. And so I think we would have to have a lot of conversations just about how we could even make that viable, and we'd have to change our budget, we would have to change our bylaws, which would have to happen through a referendum. And I have some qualms about that from, like a governance point of view of just the logistics of how we could make that happen. Yeah, Meredith?
Yeah. I'm just gonna kind of like jump on with Brendan and Soph a little bit. I think overall I like the plan. I think the continuum of mental health is like hitting the nail on the head with how mental health concerns can be addressed. And then radically welcoming students with a target on equity deserving students is definitely like a need that needs to be addressed on campus. So there's a lot of great stuff in the plan. But I agree with Brendan and Soph. We're still working on the residence renewal. I don't think at least I would not feel comfortable voting yes on a plan that includes the residence renewal as it is now. And I still think that we do need to have a lot of conversation because we're not comfortable where it is. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think Sophia has something, her hand up as well.
Sorry, that's an old hand.
Oh, never mind. Ben, did you have something to say? I think I forgot to ask you. No? Okay, cool.
Oh, no.
Sophie, do you have a new hand?
Yes, I do have a new hand actually. Something else to consider too, especially Elizabeth, as you like just kind of mentioned after I had mentioned the renewal plan within the strat plan, especially with conversations still ongoing with regards to House Council structure, especially having that in the strat plan also feels kind of odd, just because as much as there's so much that is under your purview of like abilities, and not saying that like, but it is our governance, and so having it in a university strat plan, like as much as we are looking to collaborate and like kind of keep those conversations ongoing, it does kind of feel really odd to have even just that one phrase about changing House Council governance in the university strat plan when that conversation is still ongoing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it just means some like major implications for, once again, we're in the midst of, we're doing a governance overhaul, and just like having to redo that project to kind of conform to what's happening while we don't really have a solid idea of what actually the outcome is going to be, is somewhere I have a hesitation, especially when we've poured hours and also lots of money into doing that and making sure that it is like best practice. It's just kind of, logistically I have some qualms.
Elizabeth, where would you say, where's our feedback mostly going? Like, is there, when you go to Senate, I mean, we're having this excellent discussion right now, but is it still a working and lively document, or is it kind of, or are these mostly just kind of formalized things and then it's going to be pushed through and great, we talked about it, but not much really happened? Like, what's really going on with our feedback right now?
Well, that's a good question. Well, what, your feedback will be integrated into the plan. So if you're like, you know what, like, you know, Mackenzie gave great, just, you know, very, very solid. So the next step that we're working on now is what we're calling an implementation matrix. So we're taking all of the priority actions that have been endorsed by the various groups, and we're basically saying, okay, how would we do that? Do we have the existing resources to do that? Do we need new resources to do that? Where will we get those resources to do that? And that's where priority setting really, that's where you get down to the crunch. So what I've heard is that, you know, that the priority for you is, you know, maybe delay the, if we had to put a lot of resources into that whole campus approach and training everybody up and building awareness and building understanding, you'd rather have another counselor in the counseling center first, is what I've heard from at least some of you. So, and looking at the wait times and looking at, you know, some of those other pieces, and then maybe moving on. So your feedback will go into helping us prioritize for the implementation matrix. And, you know, there may be some things it's like, we don't foresee in the coming 2 to 3 years having money in the operating budget to prioritize these things. However, maybe we see there's an opportunity right now because a lot of our priorities are aligning with government priorities. Often these types of priorities are of interest of donors. So we would identify these as key areas for external fundraising that could allow us to start some of these initiatives while building an ability for the university to put it into the core budget funding for the campus. So that's where this feedback is going to go. I think, you know, your feedback right now is like, are these the right things? Are these the right things for us to be focusing in on? Then we start to look at, okay, how would we actually do these things? What are the resources it might take? And then you can have a much more granular discussion. And I'm happy to share, like, as those documents evolve, like, I'd be happy to come back again whenever is appropriate and say, okay, here's how this is, you know, starting to look like it's going to roll out year over year, right, to keep you involved. And I mean, there's some things on the proactive side that I can't overlook. Like, one of the things that I was hired to do was to really strengthen the residents' experience as well as manage risk within the residences, so student health, safety, wellness. And that has only, the importance of that has only grown since the pandemic. And I don't know if any of you know, but it was about, I think 17, about, I can't remember how many years ago exactly, but they changed the, it would be about probably 12 years ago, they changed the date at which Nova Scotia students could start grade pre-primary. So it used to be your birthday had to be October 1st. You went to turn 5 by October 1st. That changed to December 31st. So this year, on top of all of the post-pandemic stuff, we're going to have a much younger cohort of students in residence with us than we've ever had before. So these are the kinds of things that I've had direction from the board and from, you know, from the executive team to address. However, whatever I needed to do to address that. So some things maybe don't float up through student consultation or even faculty consultation, but I'm being directed by my superiors to take action on those fronts specifically. So some of that work is responsive, some of it is proactive. So I wouldn't be able to push all that aside in favor of, you know, putting another counselor in residence. I have to find a balancing act between all of the priorities that are coming forward from all of the stakeholders. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, I guess, so far, I guess just from what I've been hearing, like, it sounds like moving forward for, like, endorsement wise, just because there are still like kind of concerns with like the residence piece, the residence renewal piece in there. Going off what you said earlier, like, would it be a possibility to kind of have this out as like a separate thing and moving forward? And
Yeah.
because we really like, I really do like the whole staff plan. It's just like the only part would be with that residence renewal aspect, which makes it kind of difficult. But would that be a possibility?
Yes, we can do that. That's not a problem, and it did feel a little awkward putting it in there. Because it wasn't the same voice, and really many of the outcomes of the residence renewal will support those strategic plan outcomes, so in some ways it doesn't make sense to have them in there as their own thing. I think we were just trying to find a way to make it transparent, and so that it didn't feel like it was being swept under the rug, for you guys especially, right? So I was going back and forth, and I was just like, no, let's put it in there so it's named, and as long as you know that that's, a big part of the work that we're doing and how it connects with the strategic plan outcomes. And of course, some of it connects more than others, like the strengthening of the RLC role and the strengthening of the SCA role, and really getting clarity around when we keep having, those assistant residence life coordinators who are working the doors, and those were pretty big decisions that have an impact, especially on student life. So again, I just didn't want it swept under the rug in that way. Yeah.
Can I say something? Yeah. So I mean, as Jack said, that like it's a pretty good plan, and it's a pretty good cohesive plan. That's how I would put it as well. And like connecting it with residence renewal will exclude our off-campus students in a way, right? And it's not like we can restrict students just stay on campus. They're going to go off campus after some time if they want. It's their wish, right? So I think keeping them separate would really help you in building a more student residence plan that also includes students that are not living on campus, and then it's connected anyways if you do a good work. So
yeah. No, I appreciate that feedback. It's good. But it sounds like other than that, you like the plan?
Yeah.
Right on.
I'm just gonna say, like, I know a lot of this has been focused around like mental health and residence renewal, and they kind of, I know there's a lot of conversations going around, like, other than literally 2 bullet points in this document, I really like the way that it's going. It's just, I think just the implications of having like the word shifting house council governance in this is what's really like holding back from me being able to give my endorsement right now because of all the implications that this has for you.
Yeah.
I think that's like, at the end of the day, I like everything else. It's just literally one sentence that's holding me back because of the implications.
Sure. I think we can. I will make those changes. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, it's not really fair for the university to say we're going to change house council governance. I mean, we can do our thing, but we can't speak to what they're doing. So we will make the changes we need to make within our residences, and then it's up to you to do what you need to do. So with your governance.
And most of the conversation that we've had, especially on this, has been so much focused on building community and empowerment and having those students feel like they belong. And that's kind of where we shifted a lot, or at least I personally, on this endorsement, is just trying to create a plan, especially in-house governance, that gets everyone involved. And really have it just, we talked about the social capital, right? Like there's so many social norms that we have if we just look here, right? Like decorum in council, what we say, what we do, how we operate. And I mean, that comes from the community that we share, that mutual respect. And that's really what we're trying to build, to create a better residence experience. I think that's kind of the focus. And that's like for us students to really decide on how that's governed. Because we can, if it's peer-led, if it's student-led, we all feel empowered, and we all have this little bubble, this little fake social bubble that keeps us operating all in a respectful manner. So I think that's kind of, having the university decide that won't really change that much in residence, because it's more of a grassroots student-led idea, concept.
And balancing that at the same time. So absolutely facilitating peer leadership, but balancing that with the ability of the university to have accountability for what is happening within the residences, and accountability for ensuring that whatever's happening scales to all the buildings, like, and that's not reliant on, if we're gonna be providing a level of programming and experience, we need to make sure that it can be scaled to everyone, and the consistency of that, sustainability, all of those pieces is still the university's accountability. So at the end of the day, it's absolutely a partnership, and each body or each organization, university and union has a very different role. Yeah. So we'll navigate that. I'm confident that we'll navigate that. And that was really my next question, is I'm really excited and interested in some of the opportunities to partnership. So there's obviously the residents ongoing, navigating that relationship in a way that really builds on the accountabilities and energy and ability and capacity of both. Are there other areas that you see opportunities to collaborate and work together on some of these things?
I'll say something. I think just from my experience with my own honors thesis, kind of researching about student behavior on campus, I think is that there's an opportunity for students, it could be through their honors too, but for the university to get updated, unique data on their own campus, and they use students to do research, or they hire like staff to give grants to do students to do research. It can be crazy, and you have so many opportunities across faculties. Like, you can do all this research about like social capital and peer-led stuff in res. You can do what I'm doing for qualitative analysis on health, and I think that's a cool opportunity. It gives students like a huge people who are actually doing research, it gives them an advantage to have that experience as well.
Absolutely. And that's what, if there's one thing that I want to do with the strategic plan, is to give people a way in so that everyone understands what are our priorities. So we are prioritizing mental health, we are prioritizing harm reduction's approach to substance use, we're prioritizing the respectful communities that you spoke of, Josh. We're prioritizing communities that are free from racism and sexualized violence, again, that optimize health. So by creating a structure where student researchers and faculty can be doing service learning within the structures that we're building, we really hope to enable the community to come a bit alive and to support a lot more. So I may have mentioned this to you already, but Erin Austin, great example, her health psychology class is doing service learning with us in the hub. So her whole class, 30 students, are in the Bloomfield Hub, and they've created the ideas for a lot of the events that are happening. They're in there carrying them out. They're being peer mentor supports for their fellow students, and that's a perfect example of what I want to build in the residences. So having maybe some more themed communities, outdoor education, we have an outdoor education program in education. Why don't we have a residence that has that theme supporting it, that provides a bit of a base for some of the great societies that are already happening and connects, and maybe we get a bus going. Those are the kinds of things that if we can build a structure and resource it properly, then we can receive and support these research initiatives and the service learning initiatives that I'm really hoping people will start to say, oh, okay, I see how my work could support some of these goals for students more concretely.
Give me a question too, around where maybe collaborate. I do think it would make sense to collaborate with the extended orientation and transitions program. I think throughout the summer, kind of starting to build up what that's going to look like, and who's responsible, who's kind of like what, and what we want to expand
completely awed by is the orientation as it is now.
Yeah.
And the ability of the union to engage students in really fun, substance-free programming that's educational and community building. And so my hope is to extend that over a longer period by partnering and working with the union on those things. Yeah.
Ask if there's any online questions. Anybody?
Yeah, so in terms of like the motion that has been placed on the table right now, there is the option that we can table said motion, and then kind of reevaluate it when we have a plan that perhaps doesn't include the residence renewal, because I think that's been like a very evident part of this conversation is that that might be where our like hesitations lie. So in terms of like being the chair, when it comes time to when that motion is introduced, I can look favorably upon a motion to table the motion until things are kind of in a better spot to vote on, and we can do that over email as well, to kind of just make things more streamlined and easier. If folks feel good about that, is that kind of where we're feeling that we're at right now?
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
I
like
agree.
just for clarity, like realistically, the student union endorsing possibly like an altered strategic plan would be before you bring it to Senate.
Yeah, ideally.
Yeah.
That's what I prefer. Because in that way, your senators will feel really confident in saying, yeah, I know I have council behind me when I endorse this. So.
Elizabeth, sorry, just quickly. It's been a little hard to hear some of it, but is that a possibility? Do you believe like strongly that you could get it taken out of the strat plan?
Oh yeah, I can. Because I mean, it's a project it's a discrete project, and while the project supports many of the it supports many of the strategic directions, like the change to our staffing for the RLCs is going to support those guided opportunities and strengthen the mental health supports and the proactive work that we need to do in residence. So that's fine. I don't have to paint that picture by including the residence renewal references at all. Like the residence renewal project is a big project, and you know there's multifaceted pieces that appear throughout the strategic plan, but that doesn't mean it has to be referenced explicitly. So I don't mind doing that at all. And yeah, what I'm really looking for is kind of do I charge on with those changes, because next I'll be going to a lot of the leadership teams within the university to be getting similar feedback. So what I can do is get back to you before Senate with, I will just track the changes and then give you an opportunity to look at the final version. But what was important to me is that I know that I have your blessing, and with a few tweaks to charge on and then speak to, because what I also wanted to do was going into the senior leadership team, they would look at me and say, what do the students think? So this is great, if I can go ahead with the understanding that, you know, you're happy with a few amendments. I'll consolidate all of the final feedback that I get from all of those leadership teams, send it back to you with the track changes, and then you could have a vote.
Yeah, we do just like an email vote, and then I can send you the results of it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That works for me. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was a really good discussion today. Do we have any last thoughts? All right. Yeah, any last thoughts for the people online?
Y'all got anything to say?
Thank you again for coming in, Elizabeth.
Oh, well, thank
Yeah,
you. I
thank you
so
really
much.
enjoyed
Yeah.
it. Yeah, it's been great to have so much of your time. I really appreciate it.
Awesome.
It's our last council, so thanks for coming to the last
Yeah.
one.
Last council.
No problem. Well, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right.
I'll take that.
If nobody minds, I need to go to the bathroom, guys.
So do I. I was just gonna.
I break. We can just do like a quick 2-minute break, and then we'll get back to the budget, because I cannot hold it out.
Okay.
that's
a
all right with
2-minute
everyone.
break for online folks.
Okay, take care.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Bye.
I'm gonna mute myself, so y'all don't hear the rest of the
We're in a
sentence.
desperate state.
everybody could get to their seats, maybe. No one. Doesn't matter. It'll just say there forever. Mackenzie, I'm going to ask decorum one more time. You get in your seat.
I'm sorry.
That was a joke. I'm sorry.
I wasn't joking.
What are you gonna do? Fire me? It's last council. True.
I don't know what I'm gonna do. Just know that I'm gonna do it.
Revoke your $300 that you're gonna get for
Yeah,
this
facts,
job.
we can do it that way. Sorry, my thing's on.
Okay, sorry. I've decorumed.
Okay, well, I don't know where Josh is, but
Rogue.
I'm gonna.
You just
Okay. Decorum! Gee, Willikers.
Start it off.
Alright, Brendan, we're gonna do budget now.
Sounds good. Also, sorry if you can hear a car alarm in the background, it keeps going.
Love.
And also sorry that my camera's off, my camera doesn't work. But there's a lot of issues today. Okay, I'll just talk over it.
Yeah, just talk over it.
Yeah. So I'll share my screen. Oh, it's really not gonna stop. That's really.
It's unfortunate.
That's embarrassing, actually. Oh, this is nice.
Awesome. Can everyone see this?
Yep. Oh no.
Oh,
Yeah.
how did you do that? Go back.
Oh.
You're sharing your screen, not that window.
Brendan,
Oh, I see.
try again, Brendan.
So share my window.
Decorum.
Yeah.
Oh, did I miss the vote to table the motion?
Nope, we haven't done that yet.
Oh, okay.
Don't worry, you're good.
I think it's the same.
Brennan, it's just we're looking at the mirror image of what I am looking at on my own screen.
Sorry. I'm sharing the window, not the screen. That's what I keep clicking. And I click.
Okay, I don't.
Do you have multiple windows you can choose from?
Brendan, you're not sharing anything.
Don't show it.
Then just do that and stay on the Excel sheet.
Here, wait. I'm gonna try this.
Decorum! If I have to ask one more time, Mackenzie, you have to stand in the hallway. Or you have to hold the teacher's hand for the rest of the class so you don't act up.
You need to move her in between you and Revis.
Are you good there, Brendan?
Yeah.
I have permission to speak.
Sorry. Okay, here we go.
Okay, it's budget time.
It's
We were waiting. We were having fun waiting.
Now, can you see the budget?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay.
Good
Alright, so, just to kind of preface this, we did have the general kind of overview of the budget, yesterday, so, there wasn't really any feedback. I hope it was informative and kind of provided some clarification. Right now, what I'll do today is I'll still go over the entire budget, but it'll be much less brief, but still, if there's any questions or comments or anything, definitely ask them. This is the time. So yeah, so So that's kind of generally what the budget's going to look like. So yeah, we'll jump right into it. So from our overall summary, we're in total projecting about $2.5 billion in revenue, just over, and the vast majority of that comes from student fees and just our general operating budget. On top of that, we have obviously Golden X Inn, convenience store, and then our activities and events budget all generate revenue. But at the end of the day, the general operating fee is kind of the biggest chunk of money here. I will note the addition of the convenience store. If you remember, we passed an amendment to the budget this year to add this in. Just want to make note that it is going to be kind of a standing budget line as long as the store's here. Moving into our expenses, just a quick overview. Our total expenses are just over $2.5 billion, which lands with a net income of $706, and this is following what's set out in our bylaws that we operate on a break-even budget. So we just try to operate as close to without running a deficit, obviously. So similar to our revenues, the general budget line kind of eats up most of the funding, and we'll look at that in a minute. But for the rest of it, there's a couple items that stand out a bit more. The activities and events budget's been increased just to accommodate for the fact that we're coming out of COVID a bit more. Same with external affairs, and same with the inn, and really a lot of these different budget lines. So we'll dive right into general operations. So general operations is kind of where when things don't have their own specific department, they kind of get dumped into this section. So this really accounts for all of our student fees, our health and dental plan fees, student assistance program, all these different things here. One thing I will note about the health and dental plan fees, this is a budget line that we typically kind of refer to as a money in, money out budget line. And that's just in the sense that the amount we generate in revenue is near equal to the amount that we spend on that same budget line. So in this case, we spend just $1,000 more than we make, and that $1,000 is really just an administrative fee for all the work kind of on the student union side that's put into kind of facilitating that health and dental plan. For the rest of much changes. Our honorariums are annually increased by a certain percentage, usually between 5 and 10%, just as we try to move to closer to an hourly wage, and I'll talk a bit more about that in the last section when we get into honorariums. And other than that, the budget stayed pretty similar, but the election expense budget line was increased slightly, just to account for reimbursements that the candidates receive. On the executive board's budget, there's a couple different increases. Again, increase to honorarium, and a couple other just increases. Professional development was increased just as we're coming out of COVID. But yeah, most of the other budget lines are pretty static. Activities and events. Before we dive into kind of the specific budget line, this is the general overview of the whole budget. It's pretty easy to read from here. As you can see, we're not accounting for a grad. Typically, the grad events are fairly money in, money out, if you will. But this year, just because we don't, the university unfortunately isn't permitting any events, we don't need to budget for one. So yeah, so we'll just jump into the more detailed budget line. And as I said, I won't touch on every item here, but you can see a lot of increases across the board, especially as we come out of COVID. And we're able to do this because a lot of the revenues that we're bringing in will also be increased. So specifically, if we look at O-Week, we know we'll be able to have higher engagement, more participants in the O-Week activities next year than we did last year. So that kind of, this number just accounts for that. Yeah, as I said, most of these numbers, especially in the activities and events budget, you'll see an increase as we come out of COVID. But for the most part, they're fairly static. On to communications, fairly similar to what I've been saying. A lot of the departments can expect to kind of see things return back to normal, to what they were before this budget line, before this fiscal year. And that's kind of what I also based a lot of the calculations and assumptions, if you will, were based on a combination of these COVID years as well as what the year previous to this had looked like. So the marketing budget, as I said, we've increased the marketing team wages just to assist Matt as he kind of transitions back into his role here, just to provide him with the most support possible, and also just to provide us the opportunity to hire a summer student for the marketing team as well. Moving on to residence affairs. Once again, nothing really has changed. In terms of house hockey, sometimes people ask a bit about the house hockey question, just what happens if we don't have that, we spend $20,000 on it. Once again, it's one of those items that's money in, money out. So the fact that we make 20 and lose 20 off of it, it really cancels out. So if it happens from a budget kind of perspective, if it happens, great. If not, it doesn't really impact us. Obviously, we want to have it. Other than that, once again, most of these changes in this budget are more to reflect what the actual financial report stated, and they're just to kind of provide a bit more kind of a clear idea of what we're actually spending in terms of these different budget lines. You'll see the off-campus leaders honorarium was removed from its own budget line, just included in the general honorariums. More so just for to clean the budget up, if you will. But yeah, other than that, that's residence affairs. External affairs. accounted for that in the calculation. But other than that, most of these stayed fairly static, or were just slightly readjusted to better reflect actuals. The Golden X Inn, very similar to the activities and events budget, just in the sense that, you know, there a lot of the expenses were increased. So, for example, you know, bands and entertainment, production, different things like that. There was an increase in food service. There's an increase in liquor purchases, and these are just to accommodate for the fact that we'll be able to stay open later, longer, more people, more staff, things like that. So it's almost the increase is kind of across the board. It's proportionate to the revenue that's generated as well. I say that liberally, but there is sort of a connection between the two. So in terms of our expenses, as I mentioned, there are a couple increases just with less restrictions and things like that. One question we usually get of why is there two security budget lines? This security budget line refers to ex-patrol that we hire outside of the inn to help with the line, although we don't really have that line anymore, but it's to account for the ex-patrol that we hire as security. And then this security line is the actual internal in-staff security. So we do spend quite a bit on security, and it's kind of one of the things that allows the inn to operate as it does because of how well the security works within the inn. But yeah, so we also have a couple different other lines. There's a couple increases across the board or readjustments, again to reflect actuals. But yeah, so that's the end. And then at the end of the day, we're hoping to bring in about 24,000 net income from the inn this year. So, moving on to CFXU. Not too much changed here. Some minor readjustments, but other than that, nothing too crazy. And similar to this very weekly, minor adjustments just to better reflect the actual numbers that are reported. One change that we did make was we combined the printing and website budgets just to provide the editor-in-chief, whoever that may be, with kind of the autonomy to decide whether or not they wanted to kind of go ahead with more of a online website
actually paying them hourly, or is the honorarium just reflecting an hourly rate?
I guess I kind of want to answer your question two ways. I mean, paying them hourly is like.
I guess it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So. Glad we agreed. Because the bylaws of the union are written as so, or as such, they still have to be hired formally. But in terms of like our governance review or something, maybe one thing we could look at is moving them away from kind of the typical hiring of an honorary position and more to a standard business practice hiring. But like that's more of a governance side, less of a. They'll still be paid the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, so sorry, one thing, so Sean mentions a good point, just to kind of clarify that. So they would be classified as employees, not volunteers anymore. And the difference with that is right now, just from a legal side, with us paying individuals honorariums, we're not able to necessarily ask them to do specific work. We can kind of offer them sort of a general idea of what we want them to do, but because they're technically volunteers, we can't really give them specific direction. So just moving in this direction will kind of allow us to have a bit more kind of, I don't want to say control because that sounds kind of controlling, but essentially just kind of, it just helps us out in terms of reporting and just HR stuff, kind of things like that.
Awesome sauce.
Yeah, and other job, like if once we kind of figure out a method that works, we'll start moving other jobs to hourly right away as we can and as the budget allows. So yeah, any other
Questions?
questions?
There's no way to move on.
Yeah, are we done?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Brendan. You did a great job, King. Really thorough. Sorry, just bringing up my scripts. Oh, let me turn this thing on. Okay. All right. Well, we're gonna move into new business. I guess we'll begin with the approval of the 2022-23 budget. Would someone like to make the motion? Lisa? Okay, thank you. Awesome. Can I get a second, please? Thank you, Anna. All right. Any discussion at this time?
Good job, you're up.
Yeah, good job.
Good job,
Because I left it.
Okay,
nice
yeah.
thorough budget, eh? Always hits the spot.
All right. Would someone like to call the question? Thank you, Anna. All right. We're going to move into voting. All those. Oh, man. Is anyone opposed? Rebecca, is anybody opposed?
No.
No. Is anybody abstain? No. All right. We also had 2 proxy votes from Tiana and Atik, and they also voted in favor. So the motion passes. Awesome. Thank you, everyone. That's great. I'm just going to join the meeting again because I couldn't see anything. Oh my goodness. Sorry. Okay. All right. So we're going to move into the ratification of Anna Payson as the society coordinator. If someone would like to make the motion?
I move to make the motion.
Thank you, Mackenzie.
I'll second that.
Awesome. Thank you. Is there any discussion at this time?
Sure, I can talk on
Yes.
behalf of
Yes.
I sat on the hiring panel along with first year rep Josh Croker and Callie Beaton, and we felt that Anna had a very clear vision of what her position would be like next year with opening up with COVID and how she could help support society presidents. She was also had some great ideas for how societies could be improved throughout the ratification process and with president training. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'll just add some stuff.
Yes.
She was really excited about a post-pandemic campus, getting everyone back together, getting societies more engaged. She also talked about really making more societies and having a lot of people fit in, more sense of belonging, some more purpose. That was really good. And just make it simpler on the website to find all that stuff. The second thing that I liked she did was she's really publicizing the society well. She started a society Instagram account and just wants more cohesion within the society so we can all work together. So it was a great candidate.
Awesome. All right. Thank you for that discussion. Would anybody like to call the question? Awesome. Thank you, Anna. All right. We will move into voting. All those who would like to oppose, please raise your hands. All those who would like to abstain, please raise your hands. All right, the motion passes. We also had a proxy vote from Tiana and Atik, both in favor, so the motion passes. All right, Anna Payson has been ratified. Sicko mode. All right, so we're gonna move into our last agenda item, which was the motion that was placed on the table as an amendment. The chair, however, would look favorably on tabling a motion of the endorsement and waiting for an update.
Can I motion to table the motion? Or do we have to motion to?
I think
We have to have a new motion.
Which Mackenzie will bring up, and then you vote on it, and then it's tabled.
Can I amend the motion to table the motion?
You just table, you make the
Yeah.
motion and then you move
Yeah.
to amend or to table it.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's like an option.
Okay,
All right, so
so I'd like to first make the motion.
yeah, and then vote like table the motion.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'd like to make the motion.
Yes, with the intent of tabling. Would someone like to second that?
I'll
Awesome.
second that.
Thank you, Josh. Is there any further discussion at this time? All right, would someone like to call the question on tabling the motion? Thank you, Anna. All right, all those who would like to oppose, please raise your hands. All those who would like to abstain. All right, the motion passes to table the motion. Epic. All right. Well, that brings everything to a close. Thank you, everyone, for a great council, and for sticking through and for having some good discussion. We got a lot done here today. I also want to say, as your chair, thank you for an amazing council. You guys have been so engaged and have had amazing discussion and have worked really hard, and I've noticed that, and I really appreciate it. And also, yeah, I'm excited not to have to remember Robert's rules anymore. It's no longer my problem.
You still do.
Fuck no. All right, well, sorry.
Speaking of decorum.
Sorry. Break the rules once. Let me break the rules once, please. Okay, that's everything for me. I love you, everyone. Thank you. If someone would like to make the motion to adjourn.
I
would.
I will.
No, me.
I will.
Oh, great. Can I get a second, please?
I'll second.
Thank you, Josh. All those in favor?
We'll never know. Becca. you can
Oh,
tell.
I'm in so, yes!
Okay. All those who'd like to oppose? All those who'd like to abstain? The meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Yay.